Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week we're going to begin our Unusual Musicals Festival with 1979 Bob Fosse film, All That Jazz.
Let's dive on in. All right, everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palter. Thank you very much for listening. And if you like what you see/hear, please make sure to like and subscribe on all the spaces and places that you find your media.
Yes.
All right, let's get into our Unusual Musicals Festival. This movie is a movie you introduced me to, and it is easily one of my favorite musicals. That's out there. It's not even close, really. Singing in the Rain is one of my other ones. I don't like a lot of musicals, but the ones I do like, I really like. And this is one of them. There is so much about this movie to like. There's so much going on here.
There's a lot happening here. Yeah,
but there's so much to like about this movie. There's just like a variety of things that Stanley Kubrick at one point said this was the best film he's ever seen.
That's right.
Before he died. And so like to get it out there, like I don't even think you can stream this anywhere. The only reason I was able to is because I have it on Blu-ray on Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those movies that like just would never get made today. And if it did, it would be completely different than this. Like It's just kind of a one of a kind of experience, directed and written by Bob Fosse, who worked, had a whole career as being a dance instructor, but movies you would know him from, Cabaret and then Lenny, which we kind of see a version of Lenny in this movie as we watch it. But
that's right.
Get into a little bit about what you're hoping for from this festival, and then also kind of what a unique experience All That Jazz is.
Definitely. So first of all, I think I saw All That Jazz. Again, this is one of, I've talked about this before, Sherlock's cavalcade of movies he saw when he was probably too young, courtesy of my father. But, I remember seeing this for the first time when I was pretty young, and there's another movie in this festival, The Ruling Class, which we'll be reviewing soon, which I also saw probably way too young. And in both cases, it uses the concept of the musical as a way to express what a character is going through rather than it doing what it normally does, right? So when we normally see whether it's Chicago or Bye Bye Birdie or, any normal musical that you would see where you're like, now is the point where all of the actors break into song. And for somebody
it's
like
not
me,
annoying here. It's not annoying here for like a normal musical. Like normally you'd be like, oh, come on, that's cheesy. And the fact that they're part of a musical, I guess, helps a little bit. But like this opening sequence is like a ballet of editing and storytelling, and you're bouncing around and all sorts of stuff.
So that's one part of it. But the other part of it, I think, is that in most of these movies, maybe with the exception of Moulin Rouge, which is its own psychedelic insanity, which we'll talk about when we get to, but the rest of these movies, including Dancer in the Dark, is more looking at the psychosis that's happening to the person, where through either experiences they've had in life or things that they're going through. That's what the musical numbers are doing, is they're touching on these dramatic moments of the person's life. And it doesn't even matter that they might not be happening in reality. Instead, it's that the musical aspect becomes part of the unreality of what is happening to them. And I think that All That Jazz, Bob Fosse was a force of nature, right? I mean,
obviously
you look at things like Cabaret, definitely does this. And I think his adaptation of Chicago and some of these others definitely do this, but not to the degree of All That Jazz, because All That Jazz really is kind of this autobiographical reimagining of his own life, right?
And that's what I was going to say. You do not see that in movies almost ever. an autobiography of something. Maybe like in a way you like, oh, I experienced or I went through this, but something like this that is this wild and crazy and this reflective on yourself. First off, you just don't see the autobiography this straightforward, like, hey, this is me. Hey, my actual girlfriend is in the movie.
Is in the movie. I know. Talk about layers.
Yeah, so there's so much going on, but Joe Gideon is Bob Fosse in this movie. It's like a version of him, I guess, still in another way, but like just the fact that you are writing and directing the movie of your life and what it's about and the stuff you went through and where it goes is so fun. Like this is like a dream for anyone who like is Bob Fosse still with us? I assume he's not.
No, he is not. He
okay.
died about 8 years after this movie came out from a heart attack. So
he could have died 8 days after this movie, and it would have been the best swan song ever.
Well, and keep in mind that what this is about, and you touched on this, is that Bob Fosse was editing his film Lenny while simultaneously staging the 1975 production of Chicago, and he had a coronary. He had a heart attack. And he thought he was going to die. So this really is, up until the final death scene at the end of this movie, it is his exact experience, just placeholding a couple of people and then the artistic thing. Instead of Lenny, his is called The Stand-Up. Instead of Chicago, I believe it's not called Nylon, but it's like NY/LO or something. It's like that weird production that he's doing when everything happens and he goes into the hospital. But other than like Ben Vereen singing him off stage into death with Diane Lane, like other than
we'll
that,
get there.
Everything, or Jessica Lange, other than that,
I was
like
gonna say,
everything else is the same, right? Pretty much. And so it's like,
well, first off, let's say he is a wild man.
Oh yeah,
just like the way he's portrayed. Roy Scheider here is absolutely
God.
amazing. I can't imagine anyone else doing this. I know there's lots of other people that applied, but like I'm so glad he fought for Roy Scheider here because he's amazing in it. We have Jessica Lange that you talked about, and then Anne Reinking is his girlfriend. But he is a wild man. Joe Gideon again, popping pills. It's showtime, folks, and that's his line in front of the mirror every morning.
Yeah,
and there's so much going on from a musical perspective here. Not only is everything moving with the music and you're flowing through here, there's not actual real words being spoken until like 7-8 minutes into this movie because you're just bouncing around.
It's all montage, and it makes perfect sense that it was directed by someone who Bob Fosse, as both a dancer as well as a choreographer, and then a both musical director and a movie director. It makes perfect sense that there is this kinetic energy to all these sequences, and that so much of this movie has to do with sound. Either the musical score or the lack of music. There are these amazing moments with no music.
There's a read-through of a script. Through of a script where things just go silent, and you're just in his head with him, and you're hearing these little things and this kind of stuff, like everything in the room except for the voices and everyone laughing. The 70s partied, though. I'll say that. The 70s partied hard.
Well, this is a great 70s movie. I don't think that, people talk about movies that show the 70s. You think about, whether it's Taxi Driver.
Free Sex.
Right.
Love,
you think about
roll,
these movies that
stuff.
show this grittiness of the 70s. And nobody ever talks about all that jazz, but I'm like, oh my God, this movie is so much. Just the dancers, and the dancers' bodies and the like clothing or lack thereof that they're used to wearing all the time has this feeling of like at any minute
everyone's got the raccoon eyes from partying all night.
Yeah, like at any minute this could turn into like a drug-fueled orgy, right? Like at any moment. Yep. And even our characters who are a little bit more schlubby, like our musicians, right? Like kind of overweight, schlubby looking guys, like they even just exude this 70s like vibe to them. Like it feels real.
This movie has a great sense of humor too. I love how playful it is. It is so fun, and there's just like I don't know. It's like it's almost like they filmed the rehearsal of the movie that we're watching that they're making, right?
Totally.
Like it was like just kind of a playful, like, background, like, behind the scenes look at a lot of this stuff. You know, obviously there's speed and many, many women and a variety of things. And, you know, Gideon's supposed to be despicable, right? But you kind of love him, and he's charming, and you get why he gets so many girls and how he's that charming. And, like, I don't know, like, you're supposed to hate him, but you really end up loving him.
If it was a different actor, if it wasn't Roy Scheider, there is something about him where his self-deprecating, he's too smart for his own good, right? And he constantly knows that. And part of what makes this balance work is that we're talking about the realism and this grittiness, not just to the atmosphere, but to something you just mentioned, which is it feels like a rehearsal. The way that people are talking over each other, the fact that we get this kind of almost sotto voce, we're watching one actor realizing something or having a dramatic moment, but the actors in the background, their dialogue is what we're listening to. We're not even like there are these layers and layers and layers to performances where we have to really focus in on the thing we're supposed to be watching to see this nuance that might be happening in front of us. And while all of that is happening, which feels very real, the other thing that's happening is we're cutting away to this stage-like, and I love the ambiance here. I love this low cloud of fogginess, this gauziness around everything, where we have Scheider, and then we have Jessica Lange as Death.
Yeah, it's like a dream sequence.
You
don't know she's
You don't know she's deaf yet.
You just think maybe it's an ex-wife. You don't know. It's just a pretty girl.
But she's asking him these, like... She's
flirting with him too.
Two things are happening. Oh, I love this. Two things are happening. Because she's flirting with him, but she's also asking him very, very direct questions about his behavior in his life. And unlike every other woman that he talks to throughout his real life, he's answering her honestly. And so that we know that something's different. It's not just through the direction, although the direction here is brilliant. And again, I go back to movies from the same era, like Catch-22, like Johnny Got His Gun, like these other movies that do this duality between dream and reality, that have this gauziness to them that makes you feel... It's like, even if nothing scary is happening in the scene, it creeps you out. There's something just like inherently creepy about Lange's character. Even though she is flirty and funny, you're like, she's dangerous. I don't know why yet. I don't know who she is yet, but she's dangerous.
Yeah, it's like a therapist, but you know, it seems like this continued dream sequence, and you're not totally sure what it is.
Yes.
I have to say the stand-up comedy in this movie is really solid. Now, we have to remember he's cutting the stand-up, which is supposed to be Lenny, and the guy in the movie is not supposed to be Lenny Bruce. It's supposed to be Dustin Hoffman playing Lenny Bruce.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there you go. Right?
Yeah.
Because Dustin Hoffman played him in the movie. So it's pretty interesting, but quite a feat, and there's just so many aspects of what they're doing to make this. It was just quite a feat. I had absolutely fun loving it. But like to the point of the stand-up, you know, at first it's just kind of this funny bit, and it kind of goes on too long. You're like, okay, what's going on? You don't get that he's editing a movie necessarily, and you're just watching this comedian, and they're in the screening room, but like, why is he in there? Is he a filmmaker too? Like, you don't know. They don't totally explain it. And so you're
and the
watching
dad
this
from
bit,
we have
and,
the
and,
dad
and,
from Alf who
that's right,
is super neurotic and upset and pissed off at how long
the dad
he's
from
taking
Alf,
from to put this thing together, right?
For sure. But you know, it seems like just a couple funny bits. They are really funny, and he talks about the 5 stages of grief and all this stuff, and that ends up becoming way more relevant and repetitive near the end of the movie, and you start really understanding why they're showing all of this stand-up comedy in here. But it's also like, even the guy who's like checking the mic at the burlesque club when he's a kid is like hilarious, and he's super dry, just like, hello, is this thing on? And like all of the stand-up comedy in this movie is awesome.
Totally.
And it added this weird cool layer to everything.
Well, and all of the ensemble of his crew, whether it be the drummer or the the very overtly gay songwriter, and like this whole little subplot where the songwriter has made the number about the airline, and then when he comes in and turns it into this like sex fueled thing, but it's also like brilliant. This is one of the things I like about this, is that too often we have stories where our main character is supposed to be the best at what they do, and all we do is see people talk about how they're the best. And while in this movie there definitely are people talking about how he's the best, we also see him being the best. We see him do things where you're like, that's genius. And this airline musical number is one of them, where it definitely freaks out the investors, the producers. They're like, well, we just lost the family audience.
Just lurking.
Yeah. But at the same time, the number itself is brilliant, and it's almost his mea culpa to his ex-wife, who's constantly telling him like, you don't even care about the women that you're sleeping with. So he, almost as an apology to her, writes this piece that pisses off all of the investors and producers, but as an apology to her, even though she's still mad at him. But this idea of like erotica airlines, we take you everywhere and get you nowhere, like so brilliant, such an incredible moment. And even just the way that you see the dissection of the happy-go-lucky plunky piano number that the main songwriter writes, and then the way that he stretches it out and turns it into this like erotic come hither kind of song that ends up creepy at the end of it, is just like, what an incredible moment in this movie that didn't need to have any of that, right? It could still be like, oh, he's a womanizer and he feels bad and he's a genius and let's move on. Takes time. This movie takes time to show you those moments.
Yeah, that's a great way to make it stand out, right? Like that's what makes it its own thing. We have his relationship with women is, I want to say it's complicated, but it's not. It's like you said. It's like he just doesn't care. He's like, let's go for it. Like he says to Jessica Lange, I cheated every chance I got. Yeah. And he's all around all these beautiful fit women all day. And we have the scene with the one girl the girl that he calls his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he for some reason, he could cheat as much as he wants, but he continually throughout the movie, this first scene though is what I'm talking about, when he calls her out about, hey, you seen someone? Is that a date? Like, hey, what's going on? Like, you shouldn't be doing that. And gets kind of pissed about it. And one of my favorite lines is, Michael Grant is a very tall man.
Yeah,
and
it's a tall name.
On the phone. It's a tall man. And then she kind of ends up coming back and, was just mostly playing with him. And she's just like, I just wish you weren't so generous with your cock.
And his response is, that's a great line. I could use that. Yeah,
it's such a good line. It is a great line, and I was rolling when I heard that.
Totally.
Like, oh my god.
Well, and there's this really interesting vector between his womanizing, his ex, and then his daughter, because it's so hard to imagine.
Michelle.
Like, even though he never voices it, you can see. I feel like in the moment where his girlfriend and Michelle, the daughter, are doing really what is a classic Bob Fosse dance number to Everything Old Is New Again to try and cheer him up, that they're doing their razzmatazz dance together. It's got to be going through his head knowing that his daughter is heading into the same field that he's been in there as this predator in, and what's going to happen to her, right? Like,
sure,
the same, because she's what, 11, 12 maybe in this movie, and you're like, look, man, 3 years from now, Gideon, there's going to be another young predator like you that's going to be out there that's going to bed her before she even knows what it means, right? And like those layers just exist there, and it makes me love seeing the moments of him talking with her, but they're dancing together at the same time. It's such a beautiful moment.
It's a cute little relationship, and obviously very meaningful to him. And it's really probably the only thing that he's, I don't want to say that he's proud of, but like that, even she calls him out on stuff, but she also wants him to just settle down and get married and quit being so crazy.
Well,
and
you know,
he's popping pills, and she's like, "What is that?" It's mint.
It's a mint. You wouldn't like one.
You don't want one.
Well, and you know, you make a really good point too of what is he proud of. And I think that I love that this shows us the character of Gideon, that it's almost this like, I really appreciate that all he wants to do is create and to be with his friends. And if he can't create and be with his friends, he might as well die. Even to the point where doctors are telling him, you are going to die if you don't stop this. And he still is like, I don't give a shit. Like, I want to create, I want to get back to work. Like, I mean, most people, if they had that angina with like the possibility of like having a coronary, would be like, oh yeah, I got to stay here. He doesn't care. He's arguing. He's like, we can't put the show on hold. My God, are you kidding? Like, he's angry about it.
This doctor is so annoyed by him. Like, it's so funny because he's just like, he doesn't care if he lives or die. We're trying to... and the fact that he's that wild of a person that he's grabbing nurses' asses and just can't contain himself in the hospital is hilarious.
Yeah, I love it. It's all so ridiculous. And I do love also the double caricature of that angry doctor also showing up in his hallucinatory state, doing a full like tap dance, shuck and jive, like, I'm the doctor. It's great to see those actors also, you know, because in the real version of the world is so real that to us, we almost think of them, that's a doctor, right? Like, that's not an actor, that's a doctor. So to then see him inside of Gideon's brain on a stage doing a razzmatazz is really fun, because you go, oh yeah, there's duality happening here.
So much duality. And like you said, it's hard to know what's real, what's not. And, you know, I love the Lithgow character, Lucas Sargent here, who's kind of just coming to steal his job, kind of. Yeah. But funny note, in real life, that is Michael Bennett. And they went on to have a rivalry for years after this. And I think until his death, but he... you know, there's a quote at the end of the movie that he puts in there as an extra little jab when Lithgow hands it, and then like it's like, oh, are you Lucas Sargent? She's like, oh, you're amazing. Next to Joe Gideon, you're my favorite. You're my favorite. You almost said Bob Fosse, which is exactly how it would appear to that dude, right? For sure. But I thought that was just really kind of a fun. And Lithgow looks so like so young here. I don't know if I've seen a movie where he's looked younger. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, this and The World According to Garp, probably neck and neck, and when it comes to that. But that was after this, wasn't it? I think so, yeah. That was in the 80s. I love Jessica Lange here. I love, you know, there's an early moment where we start to realize where the movie's really headed, if you didn't already know. And we see, you know, he's running around, he's so busy, just chain smoking and partying and all of this. His body has to be exhausted. And his body's exhausted, and we see him, and he's getting a little bit of chest pain, and he's just squeezing that arm. And in that moment, again, it gets dead quiet. I mean, again, for a guy who's a musical theater director to be like dead quiet, we see him squeezing his arm and feeling his chest, and we see Jessica Lange. She takes off the veil, she lets her hair down, and she gives the camera this come hither look. And it's terrifying. It's like these moments, like to start with this symbolism and say, here's what we're going to use to play with. As the movie starts eking towards that finality, all of it pays off. All of it works. There's never a moment that doesn't work. Even down to like the sneering, super fucked up, funny Ben Vereen in our third act, like placing him early on and then having him come in sweaty and singing and dancing, talking about like, now here you are, you're gonna die, is like, it's so dark, man. It is like, it's the numbers, the musical numbers are amazing, and you're jazzing along to them. I was gonna say, like, it's super dark, but layered with this great sense of humor, this song and dance, and like you never like look at death as like I don't want to say a bad thing, but like you never see it as super daunting. Even, he breaks the fourth wall of his dream in this hospital. What is it? The hospital hallucination scene. They even put on the marker.
Click. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
And so it's this whole production of his life, right? And the women in his life, and asking himself if he wants to print it or not. Like, was that a good take?
Oh my God.
So
you missed your line. You had a line here where you said, I want to live, and you missed your line. Like,
and he never says it, by the way. I don't know if you realize that. But he breaks the fourth wall of his own life in the movie, and there's like two of him, and one's in the bed, and he gets this whole chest surgery.
Dude, that whole sequence,
heart attack,
the medical hallucination sequence,
amazing.
Dude, that is Charlie Kaufman before Charlie Kaufman.
I was gonna say, like, when Charlie Kaufman made Schenectady, New York, he had to have thought of this movie, right?
Well, the fact that we have the girlfriend, the ex-wife, and the daughter all doing their own musical numbers.
I could also see Inarritu and Birdman a little bit.
Oh my God, totally, totally Inarritu. I completely agree with that. I didn't even think of that, but you're absolutely right. And somehow using this. Like, one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is that Bob Fosse used both the realism aspect of seeing our main character in a very real space with real actor or with real dancers and real musicians and having these real conversations, and it feeling very much like a lived-in space, right? Like, we could feel the sweat, like we could smell it, like it was very real. And then to utilize this dream sequence, but what makes it supernatural is actually the utilization of a real space, but putting surreal elements in it. So in the medical hallucination montage, the fact that we can see the stage scaffolding behind them that goes way too high, and that way up on top are doctors operating on patients, right? Behind this weird kind of viscous veneer. And that's how we utilize that. And then having like a very real film crew with a real like boom crane coming down with...
Yeah, it's like a behind the scenes movie.
It's like utilizing that to say, here's your dream sequence. And even the later dream sequence that becomes this kind of Ziggy Stardust nightmare. Even that one, everything that we're seeing feels very real, where it still is taking place on this stage. He didn't say, oh, this last sequence is going to be in a field somewhere. He still utilized all of the tools of the trade to have it be this nightmarish last moment of his life. And I loved that. I thought that was just such a wonderful utilization.
Just the fact that it's directed like a play or a musical, and just Broadway and Showtime, and all this stuff is all wrapped up into all of these hallucinations, and the Bye Bye My Life, Goodbye, song at the end obviously is like kind of the finale.
Oh, the sequence, that sequence is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
He's gonna die.
Yep. I think I'm gonna die. Yeah. And like going up and seeing everybody, and it's
like
outfits.
Delightful. It's like a delightful good time about someone dying.
Right. And so it's working
how does it work?
It's delightful and sardonic and sarcastic, and then the undercurrent underneath it is just uniquely terrifying. Even though it isn't on its upper level, underneath it, you're like, this is the thing that's actually happening. And even the outfits, these like, one-piece unitard things that the women are wearing that have the veins drawn over the top, like everything about the way that it looks is just like, the tone of it becomes funny, beautiful, and creepy all at the exact same time. And I don't know, like, it's so unique. I just haven't really seen anything like it. Yeah.
It's a one-of-a-kind movie. Definitely one of my favorites. Last thing I'll say is when the movie reviewer comes on TV and reviews the stand-up, Davis Newman in the stand-up in the
Yeah.
review. She gives it half of a balloon as her rating.
Oh, it's amazing. That's amazing. I know. And then
good.
lets the air out. And then that's what sends him into his coronary,
In my
right?
4-star, in my 4 balloons, I give this half a
Half
balloon.
a balloon. I know. so
dumb.
corny. Last things I'll say. Two things. One, I feel like there has to have been a nod from Requiem for a Dream in his getting ready in the morning montage. Just the shower, the cap, the pill, the showtime. Like the repetition of that just feels like something
Interesting.
Aronofsky had to like. It feels like there's a comparison there. And the other thing, you mentioned earlier, the stages of death coming back to him when he kind of like leaves his room and is wandering around is brilliant. And the final culmination of his acceptance, I love that before the Ben Vereen song number, there's a very real world version.
You mean his good friend and humanitarian?
Not much of a humanitarian and nobody's good friend. I love that. That's amazing. But there's
good.
a gritty real world version of his acceptance. And it's when he gets onto some weird ward of the hospital when everybody's looking for him. And he finds the old woman who is like in the throes of death or something. And he embraces her, kisses her full on the lips, and says, "I love you." And they share this moment together. And again, silence. It becomes so quiet. This movie somehow has super high levels of both bombastic song and dance numbers, super over-the-top erotic numbers, and then these moments of complete silence. And that one to me just broke my heart. And I just have to say, like, I've seen this movie so many damn times, and it still never fails to move me.
I agree.
By that final frame. Just incredible.
You never stop enjoying it. It's always fun, no matter what's happening.
And I feel like I always notice something new. I always notice something that I'm like, I didn't see that last time.
Because you could see why Kubrick would say this is one of the best films he's ever seen. Like, just from his film dork like perspective of how they did so much of the stuff, and what a grandiose thing they're trying to accomplish is.
Yep.
So wonderful movie.
I completely agree with you, dude. Like, if Bob Fosse had died like 5 days after this, like, if this is your way out the door, hell man.
I wish I had something this cool when
oh my god, like, what a way. Just like, look, just play it at my funeral. I'll see you guys later.
yeah.
Absolutely
Love it.
amazing.
Sounds amazing. Great kickoff to our Unusual Musicals Festival. I think next week we're going to get into Moulin Rouge. And then we're going to get into a few others. And then we're going to do a punishment review of Cats, if you guys can wait for that. That's going to be fun. So make sure you tune in for that, and make sure you like and subscribe. We really appreciate everyone listening. Go to all the spaces and places, and we will see you next week.
Bye, you guys. So, Christmas. Tell me about your scooter.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's more for the kids, but I can take it whenever I want.
It's a family scooter.
Yes. Well, you brought yours over, and then $400 later, we had one.
have you
no,
been
it was
taking
actually a gift from my sister, but it was a blast. We have a lot of fun. So we're gonna have a scooter gang, right?
Dude, we're gonna start a scooter gang. It's gonna be amazing. I love my scooter. I love tooling around on that thing.
So for those who are listening or watching, it's kind of the ones you rent when you just want to like zip around.
Yeah,
town
it's
or
like
whatever,
a Lime scooter or a Bird. Yeah, it's like one of those. But like, yeah, this last year, my wife bought me one for my birthday, and especially like when you're kind of stuck at home, like it's just amazing to be like, I'm gonna go cruise around for a minute on it.
Yeah, it's fun. We didn't get one that went too crazy fast. Like yours can get up to what, 30 miles an hour?
No, God, no. No, I think the fastest it goes is about 18.
Oh, okay, that's about what I have then.
Yeah. No, 30 miles an hour, I wouldn't trust myself on that. I think that would be...
Yeah.
I'm at the age now where, like, if you remember when you were a kid, it's like if you fell out of a tree, it'd be like, oh, I'm on the move. Like,
Can't
if
do that anymore.
oh, God. Yeah, now I'm like, if I like, fell down one stair, it would be like a week of like, ow, oh, God. So I can't even imagine if I was riding around on a scooter with 30 miles an hour.